Hello everybody, it's jrobi, and I've got a match that I just played on the free internet chess server I'm going to go over. It involves a king walk, and interestingly enough, the match before involved a king walk as well, and in that one I didn't have the pawns. My opponent had 2 pawns and a king, and I was able to draw a stalemate from that and get half points because my opponent made a blunder and stalemated my king. So in this match, when I landed a king walk position in the end, I thought it was pretty cool considering I just played one earlier, except now I was the one trying to promote. So we'll go through that and we'll see how it went. So the opening here is pretty straightforward, although my opponent right away attacks with his bishop on b5 to my knight. I'm not too worried though because I've got some pawns backing it up for the time being, so I just move to f6. He takes, and then I take with my pawn on c6. Now I do get doubled pawns in this position, but what I've been finding out in the beginning of a match, they don't stay doubled for very long because of all the center play. So my opponent plays d3, I play d5. He takes and I take, so as you can see the doubled up pawn problem is gone now. He takes with his knight on e5, and I pin his knight to his king. And then he reinforces his knight with his bishop. From here I go to d6, and my opponent castles. And now I go to g4. My knight's protected by my bishop. He plays knight to g6. It was a little bit of a blunder. I think he was thinking of opening up an attack on the queen here, but the knight was unprotected, so he just ended up losing his knight. Now he plays bishop to c7, and I play bishop to c5. So I've got some really nice pieces lined up here for an attack on the castle. He sees that though and plays d4. So I play d6 with my bishop, offering either he can trade, or if he peels his bishop off, I've really got some good attacks here. So he trades, and I take with my queen, and as you can see I've got a nice attack here on the h2 square. He moves his rook though and puts me in check. So I block with my bishop, and he blocks the attack on the h2 square. So I take the opportunity to castle. And he moves his pawn to c3. So at this point of the game he's got 7 pawns and I've got 5. So I'm down some pawns here. So I move my bishop to f5, and he moves his knight to d2. And I offer a rook trade. Now the reason I offer a rook trade is because I want to simplify some pieces off of the board here, which will allow me to use the remaining pieces to better attack these pawns here. So he goes knight to f3 and doesn't go for the trade when I offer it, so I force the trade. And from here I go to h6, and he drops his queen down to e2. I move mine to b6. Now he lines up a really good attack here, coming down the e-file, so to compensate for that I move my bishop to d7. So if he lands a piece here, the bishop can play a role in capture. He goes pawn to b4 because his pawn was weak here. So I attack his queen with my bishop, and he drops down to e7. So I move my knight to f6. The reason I move my knight there is on the highlighted squares here is all the squares my knight can attack that are going to be essential for what he's trying to do to my castle position. So I just want to minimize the combination options he has in this position. He moves his knight now to e5, which allows him to attack these squares. So I move my rook to e8, and I want my rook there because he's protected by the bishop. And from this position where his knight is and queen is, he really doesn't have a lot of options. So he checks, I move, he checks, I move. He can kind of see how it's just kind of redundant at this point. So he moves his king to g2, allowing me to put my knight now on e4. I want to start to move into this side of the board here and work on these pawns. He puts me in check again, and I move to h7, and then he moves his knight to g4. So there's some potential problems here. So in order to kind of minimize the threat that this knight and queen combo is giving me, I offer up a queen trade. He takes and I take. And he goes to f3 with his pawn, and that allows me to start working on his pawns on the right hand side of the board. He goes to e5. He didn't take the rook because the rook was protected by the bishop. So from here I have to move to h7 because I was under check. He goes to h4, which allows me to attack his pawn. Attacks my knight. He's eyeing up my a7 pawn. I just take his, he takes mine. And I offer up a knight trade here. He doesn't go for that, so I just move my bishop here, protecting my knight and pawn. He takes, and I didn't want to take at that time because I would leave my pawn unprotected, so I just put him in check. He blocks, and I line up his pawn with my rook. He moves to g4, and now I take his pawn. Moves his king to g2, and I just move my rook back because I want to continue keeping pressure on this knight, attacking him, so that my opponent has to keep his king there to protect him, or at least or just move his knight period out of the area. So he goes now to g5. I'm okay with this exchange because, as you'll see as the game progresses, this pawn here on g5 will act as a buffer between me and his rook. So I start to move my pawn up now a little bit. He attacks my rook. I offer a rook trade because I think, when I was looking at it, I felt that I had a fairly good opportunity to promote. He doesn't go for that. So he goes to c5. So I move my bishop up to e2. He drops his rook down, and I move my pawn up one more square. He comes down now and puts me in check with his pawn, but like I said earlier, I just use that as a buffer between his rook and my king. He forks my bishop and rook now, so I just move my rook to c2, and he takes my bishop. Now, I probably should have taken his rook here, but in the game I played rook takes knight on e2. He moves his king to f4, and I'm one step away from promoting here on the d file. He moves his rook into position to attack. I'm trying to get my king now into the area, but I can see here that it's not going to happen, especially when he plays king to e4. So what I decide to do is actually let the pawn go. So I move my rook to f1. He takes. Move my king to g3, hoping that he will check, and he does. Drop down to g4. He moves to d4, which allows me to do a forced rook exchange. He peels off, I take, he takes, but now I'm in a great position to capture that pawn, so I do, and now comes the king walk. So king walk is something that I practiced a few weeks ago quite a bit with my son, and just when I was bored and messing around, because I actually when I first started playing chess, I actually lost a game with this, so I wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. One thing you want to watch out for when you're doing the king walk is you always want to make sure your opponent has at least one square to move to before you promote. So from this point, he moves his king to g1. I just move my king over. I don't like the g1. Go here, he goes back, I move up, he moves over. And from here, it's just a matter of getting into this position here. So the king only has one position to move to. He moves to g1. The pawn comes up, and the king only has one option again. So he moves to h2. This lets the king come in now on f2. Now all these squares are protected and guarded from allowing this king. So he only has one option, h3, which allows promotion. So at this point my opponent resigned. So it was a good game. I thought it was pretty cool that I had stalemated a game right before this one, and it managed to save some points towards the rating. And then I myself landed king walk on the very next game, so I thought that was pretty cool. Just to let you guys know, on my main channel now there's a link to my PGN files. If you do any video responses to my whatever videos I place up, each match now has a PGN that you can download to make it a lot easier, so you don't have to just look at the screen and try to position the pieces yourself. So take care. Hope you enjoy the video.